She failed every pilot test until they realized she was flying backwards through time. Zara Blackwood had taken her pilot test 17 times and had passed 17. That number tormented her as she waited in the sterile waiting area of the Meridian Flight Academy with her worn leather flight jacket, her hands shaking a little as she held it. It had been the same jacket as the one that her father had been wearing when he had rescued the 3 colonies when he was in the middle of war with the Centauri. It was the same jacket which had now grown to a mock at everything she had endeavored to be. A woman receiving the visitors with kind eyes and graying hair treated Zara a glance full of what Zara had learned to interpret as pity. Her instructors, you see, and academy directors and fellow cadets in general had given her the identical stare on 18 separate occasions as she floundered uselessly in her simulation after simulation due to spectacularly disastrous failure. Were it not so pathetically grotesque, "Commander Hayes will see you now, Miss Blackwood," said the receptionist in a low voice. Zara rose, and her legs seemed weak. The final hope she had was with Commander Hayes. 3 times the Academy had rejected her. After being blackballed in all the major flight schools in the solar system, Hayes had finally accepted an assessment of her one more time, a final opportunity to show that she had deserved to be in the cockpit of a starfighter as was her father. The office of the commander was sparely modernized, and the walls were plastered with commendations and battle pictures. Hayes himself was a man just in his 50s, with steel gray hair and that blistered face which told of many long hours in unfriendly space. She entered, seeing his expression unreadable. As he looked up at her file, "Take a seat, Blackwood. Sit down at that chair in front of my desk. I have been going through your case. They are very interesting reading." Zara sat, attempting to sit up tall and making no transition in tones. "Sir, I am sure that my test results are not good, but allow me to clarify the situation." 17 unsuccessful simulations, interrupted Hayes as she turned over her file. "Wreck on not 1 or 2, but on all of them. But here is the thing. The manner in which you do crash. Say, Lieutenant Morrison, you have reverse instincts. You stop when you ought to go under. Shoot into the air before you see the enemies. Take a handful of turns where enemies have not even started shooting. He believes that you are a total incompetent, or you also have a neurological condition of some kind." This statement slapped Zara across the face. These were not the first versions of such assessment she had heard, but the way it had been stated, in a very clinical manner, it made her stomach knot in shame. "I can see, sir. Bad looking I know it is, but I swear I can see." "What dost thou see?" Hayes looked across, his eyes suddenly intense. "Since I have seen your footage of the simulation. Everything. Picture by picture. And you know what I saw." Zara shook her head and did not dare to speak. "You come just in time, and possibly perfect. You are floating away the volleys which are aimed at your head, shooting where there is no one to be shot at. Or I would think you were cheating, were it not that I had no idea of the preset. But you are not cheating, Blackwood. No, sir. Never. I would not. Then teach me how you can go through the same maneuvers day after day which are against all the rules of tactical flying. How, I say? Do you always happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time with unaccountable mathematical precision?" Zara was dry in the throat. She had once attempted related explanations to instructors, but the instructors reacted with derisive laughter or with a suggestion of seeking psychological counseling. "Sir, when I am soaring, things are not the same as they are seen by everybody. To me the battle is over first. I know where the enemy crafts are going to be, where the debris are going to be set, where the explosions are going to occur. And then I see how we came there." Hayes sat a long time in silence, studying her features. "You can look further on into the future." "No, sir. I view the preciousness of the past. It is an already experienced history. It is like watching a movie backwards, and I am trying to regulate the ending of the movie by regulating the initial start. That's impossible." "Yes, sir. All people tell me so." Hayes shut her file and rose and stalked over to the window, which looked across the academy training grounds. On the lower part, the cadets were performing formation drills, their steps so precise and synchronized. "The father of yours was Marcus Blackwood." It was not a matter of question. Zara nodded at any rate. "Yes, sir. I was with him in the Centauri War. What a pilot he was. The best I ever saw. It has saved my life twice." Was as instinctive as was almost precognitive. Hayes turned around to her. "Tell me, Blackwood, when did you begin to look things differently?" Zara was remembering her childhood, that time when something went wrong. "I was a 12-year-old. I was learning to fly his aging trainer with my father. We were simulating simple maneuvers, and then out of nowhere I saw us smashing on a hillside. I was able to see the effect of the impact, the explosion, and then our bodies being discovered by the rescue teams. It was so lifelike, so clear. And I began calling to him to pull up, although, of course, we were flying straight. He felt I was having a panic attack. You were not, though? No, sir. A half a minute later our engine stopped. Had my father not started climbing after I instructed him to do so, we would have crashed right there where I imagined us to crash. Better than that, we were high enough to be able to glide to Earth safely. Hayes went back to his work desk opening another file. Over the last 6 months, the Meridian Defense Force has been monitoring strange readings within this sector. Energy. Fingerprints lacking any known technology. Our scientists believe it to be something of a time distortion field. The heart of Zara started beating faster and faster. Temporal distortion, however, theoretically something that might influence how some people think of time. More particularly, those who carry certain genetic marks, those marks that, apparently, are familial in terms of predisposed extraordinary piloting skills. Hayes stared at her full in the face. I'm going to offer you the world, Blackwood. Another experiment. No simulating. The real stakes are as real as the real flight, sir. The intelligence indicates that a hostile fleet is building up in the outer confines of the system. When they come, we shall want all the pilots we can get. I will take you into a cockpit, but only on these conditions: that you would be ready to follow your instincts. These reverse instincts everybody imagines to be going the wrong way. Hope mingled with terror-thrilled Zara. Do you think I am telling you the truth? I think your father was not only a talented flyer. There was something different about him. Something which made him perceive the threats before they actually manifested, I believe. And I think you, perhaps, have inherited it. Hayes arose. And here is what it is. Blackwood, if you are right as to what you see, then we are not simply engaging in the struggle of a battle. We are in war. And you are the only person who could help us to win it. 3 days Zara was in the cockpit of a Vanguard-class starfighter strapped in place, with her hands on the controls as her squad prepared to launch. She recognized the ship with her hands, even though she was flying this model for the first time. Or sometime, perhaps, in a future which was not yet. Her squad leader was Captain Elena Vasquez, who had a reputation, and you did not want to make a reputation on her because she brought her people home, alive, and she was a decorated veteran. With 14 confirmed kills. Energy fingerprints lacking any known technology. Our scientists believe it to be something of a time distortion field. The heart of Zara started beating faster and faster. Temporal distortion, however, theoretically something that might influence how some people think of time. More particularly, those who carry certain genetic marks, those marks that, apparently, are familial in terms of predisposed extraordinary piloting skills. Hayes stared at her full in the face. I'm going to offer you the world, Blackwood. Another experiment. No simulating. The real stakes are as real as the real flight, sir. The intelligence indicates that a hostile fleet is building up in the outer confines of the system. When they come, we shall want all the pilots we can get. I will take you into a cockpit, but only on these conditions: that you would be ready to follow your instincts. These reverse instincts everybody imagines to be going the wrong way. Hope mingled with terror-thrilled Zara. Do you think I am telling you the truth? I think your father was not only a talented flyer. There was something different about him. Something which made him perceive the threats before they actually manifested, I believe. And I think you, perhaps, have inherited it. Hayes arose. And here is what it is. Blackwood, if you are right as to what you see, then we are not simply engaging in the struggle of a battle. We are in war. And you are the only person who could help us to win it. 3 days Zara was in the cockpit of a Vanguard-class starfighter strapped in place, with her hands on the controls as her squad prepared to launch. She recognized the ship with her hands, even though she was flying this model for the first time. Or sometime, perhaps, in a future which was not yet. Her squad leader was Captain Elena Vasquez, who had a reputation, and you did not want to make a reputation on her because she brought her people home, alive, and she was a decorated veteran. With 14 confirmed kills, the lead cruiser opened up on fire at once, and its huge plasma guns illuminated the blackness of space. Units all on the evasive. Vasquez commanded, Blackwood, come with me. Already Zara was operating out of formation, her fighter making a dive toward what seemed empty space. She could hear the voice of Morrison through the comm in an angry, disbelieving tone. What the hell is she doing? There is nothing in it. Zara launched her missiles into space and seen them fly away. And to her squadron it must have seemed as though she were shooting at specters. Yet she could observe the attacking soldiers, which before 20 seconds would be present, could observe the actual path their aim would have in attempting to take her squad by surprise. The missiles located their targets, even as the enemy fighters appeared around one of the asteroid, ignored by the stealth generators as they emerged ready to strike. 3 airplanes detonated one after another, and the pilots never noticed what they were hit with. Impossible, Morrison breathed back over the comm. Before they could decloak, she had shot. Concentrate on fight. With that, Vasquez snapped, but Zara could hear a hint of wonder in her voice. The fight also got so intense where each party was exchanging gunfire at close range. Zara could still fly her backwards battle, and could maneuver with moves which appeared to be impossible to follow. She would roll left to escape fire which had not yet been cut loose, go under to escape some wreckage which had yet to be made, open fire at targets that radar showed to be bare, only to have them filled in a moment by the ships of her enemy. This must have appeared like her flying drunk to her squad mates, but her targeting computer was registering kill after kill as her missiles and energy weapons were registering hits with impossible accuracy. How are you doing that, Blackwood? There was incredulity in the voice of Chen. I am fighting the battle backwards, Zara responded. Her fingers were playing over her controls now as she performed a barrel roll. That would have carried her out of the line of a missile which still wasn't its launching tube. I know where they will all be. Then I am going to be where I have to be to prevent them. No, impossible, Morrison said. And he did not mean it. He had just seen what he thought was to enemy planes cut to pieces by a single swipe of his own cannon at the end of an empty space, which the enemy planes had flown quite into. The fight went on, seemingly hours, but according to the chronometer used by Zara, only a few minutes. Even in her own time, she fought onto timelines simultaneously, with half her awareness occupied in what was left to be done in order to stop the future. She was struggling to avert. She was working backward toward the end of the battle, her squad triumphant but badly torn, the enemy fleet in complete flight, and she could already see the end of the battle. And she was steering in tiny, corrective corrections, in order that that end might come to pass. There was something out of order. The flow of time was moving, shattering. She could now envisage several futures as though they were all bleeding into each other. In one, Morrison was killed in a crossfire with his fighter. In another one, a suicide bomber destroys the ship of Chen. And in a third, the fighter flown by Vasquez had suffered a total systems failure that saw her floating dead in space. Zara began to understand with mounting terror that she was not merely seeing the future after all. She was seeing every future. Here, the field of temporal distortion that Hayes had told you about gave her personality a power overpowering to the point of insensibility. She could view the strands of causality spreading off into all directions and each choice point branching out into still more. Morrison vainly tried to block out her growing consciousness with the words, "Squad leader, we must regroup. My targeting systems report huge energy estimations of the enemy flagship. They are energizing some type of weapon." Zara looked out to the flagship of the enemy and saw it, a tremendous beam weapon, and would fire in 47 seconds. Incinerate what its beam touched by force equivalent to tearing space. She could picture the path of it, could see it cutting across the battlefield like a reaper, cutting friend and foe down. Yet she was also able to see how to prevent it. "Well, call it out," said she. "Blackwood, to all units. I require you to trust me. Form a break and come on behind me. Never mind which questions, or never mind what I am doing. Just follow." Vasquez answered, "Blackwood, you are not squadron leader." And there was doubt in her voice. In half a minute, that flagship is going to shoot something that will kill us all off, Captain. The thought of it can be visualized. I can also see how to be able to avoid it. But you must trust me, y'all. On the calm, someone had not spoken a word. Then Vasquez, "We are here, Blackwood," set an example. The feeling of gratitude mixed with a feeling of responsibility came to Zara. Now she saw the way, the course of actions, the step-by-step way to put her squad in place ready to destroy the weapon array on the flagship. But it could only do this in a formation which would contravene all principles of tactical fighting, and over a course which would carry them so much into the fire of the enemy as to ensure they're receiving a large proportion of the army's fire. "Come with me," she said, and swam toward the hostile fleet. It must have seemed suicide to anyone who saw it. At the head of her squad, Zara dived downward in a spiraling fashion toward the enemy flagship, threading among the bigger ships in what appeared to be a totally random pattern. The enemy fighters surrounded them and opened up with everything they had, but yet somehow the bullets missed them. Zara was not only flying for her person, but that of her whole group. And she was shouting of course changes that saved them all. "Turn the left. Morrison. Now. Come on round. Chen. Dive. Captain. Dive." She was seeing the movement of the enemy fire before they actually opened. Could tell when each gun was going to fire off, and the moment to expect it. Her troops obeyed her commands without argument. Her fighters moved in the lethal light display as though on a choreographed performance. as the flagship gun was only then 15 seconds away. Zara aligned her squad to go in on attack run. She was able to detect in the charging of the weapon, able to see when the shields were about to cycle to permit the beam of energy to go through. They would get a window of less than 3 seconds to fit their missiles through that hole. She ordered armed missiles. On my mark we will fire. Lock on the coordinates that I am relaying. That is open space. Zara, on those coordinates, Chen shouted. But by now she was already targeting the target. They will not be left empty in 10 seconds. Trust me, the seconds passed off at an agonizing rate. Zara could catch the glow of the enemy weapon charging, could glimpse the terrible beam which was to scorch the path through space. Or her missiles would hit the mark, and she could watch the explosion ripping through the power grid of the flagship, and automatically crippling the weapon before it could go off. 5 seconds. And she whispered it. 4, 3, 2, mark. For ships opened fire, and the missiles headed with seeming impotent velocity in the apparent direction of empty space. Nobody did anything in a moment. Then the shields of the flagship revolved, exposing the muzzle of its main gun. The missiles blasted the weapon array just after it was about to blast, and their explosions triggered a chain reaction that tore through the forward area of the ship. Too late it exploded, the mass beam weapon despite itself rending the flagship inside out. The explosion was so huge to the extent that the explosion raised a shockwave that incapacitated various nearby enemy ships, and thus the ships went out of control. Morrison gasped. Impossible. As to how she knew. Zara had though further already as to the next step of the conflict. The enemy naval forces were caught in a maze, and their flagship lay wrecked. But they did not move back. Rather, they were rallying again to make a last desperate thrust. She knew what they were up to. She knew their tactic. She knew about the kamikaze thunders they were going to make, about the suicide attacks with which they were going to obliterate the defense sentinels that guarded the township down below. To the comm she said, "They have not finished. They are going to fly their ships at the orbital platforms in an attempt to crash. We must prevent them." "How many are ships?" Vasquez asked. 7. "They will be attacking us on 3 vectors, on the cover of the debris field. We must separate. Separation is suicide," complained Morrison. "We hang on to one another. We mask up one another. According to Zara, in case we remain as a team, the platforms die. I can tell that it can happen. You are going the portway, Morrison. Starboard. Chen. Captain, you come with me on the main axis. Attack." She noticed the objections rising upon their lips, and she had not time to allow them to be spoken. "Morrison. Out here, and coming round behind the burnt flagship is a cruiser. It will attempt to crash into the main power generating station. It is your duty to pull it before it gets into the platform." Then the shields of the flagship revolved, exposing the muzzle of its main gun. The missiles blasted the weapon array just after it was about to blast, and their explosions triggered a chain reaction that tore through the forward area of the ship. 2. Late it exploded, the mass beam weapon despite itself rending the flagship inside out. The explosion was so huge to the extent that the explosion raised a shock wave that incapacitated various nearby enemy ships, and thus the ships went out of control. Morrison gasped. Impossible. As to how she knew. Zara had though further already as to the next step of the conflict. The enemy naval forces were caught in a maze, and their flagship lay wrecked. But they did not move back. Rather, they were rallying again to make a last desperate thrust. She knew what they were up to. She knew their tactic. She knew about the kamikaze thunders they were going to make, about the suicide attacks with which they were going to obliterate the defense sentinels that guarded the township down below. To the comm she said, "They have not finished. They are going to fly their ships at the orbital platforms in an attempt to crash. We must prevent them." "How many are ships?" Vasquez asked. 7. "They will be attacking us on 3 vectors, on the cover of the debris field. We must separate. Separation is suicide," complained Morrison. "We hang on to one another. We mask up one another. According to Zara, in case we remain as a team, the platforms die. I can tell that it can happen. You are going the portway, Morrison. Starboard, Chen. Captain, you come with me on the main axis. Attack." She noticed the objections rising upon their lips, and she had not time to allow them to be spoken. "Morrison. Out here, and coming round behind the burnt flagship is a cruiser. It will attempt to crash into the main power generating station. It is your duty to pull it before it gets into the platform." The final stage of the fight was the most intense. 1. The other enemy vessels had lost all pretense of strategy now, and in meaningless suicide gestures attacked the orbital platforms in waves. Zara and Vasquez combined, with their warriors interpenetrating the foe like dancers. Zara would shout targets and trajectories, and Vasquez would fly at the attack with surgical precision. He was performing as a well-coordinated action, with each action being planned to produce the greatest impact. They ran down ship after ship, their gunnery being so perfect in its aim that becoming impossible. The destruction of the flagship had already demoralized the enemy fleet, which started breaking up. In complete pieces, Vasquez shouted, clearly sounding incredulous, "Enemy fleet is withdrawing. Every platform is safe. All systems are safe. Repeat, all systems are safe." By the time that the final enemy vessel had entered hyperspace, the temporal distortion field was already starting to decay. Slowly, the several timelines reassumed themselves into one present, with her perception of time recovering. She was sitting in her cockpit, with shaking hands. This was the adrenaline and the psychic drain to have fought a battle in more than one temporal realms. Blackwood. The voice of Vasquez was heard over the comm this time, but more quietly. "How long has it taken you to be able to do that?" "I have been doing that since I was 12, said Zara, "but not as this, not this powerful. And you have been failing in flight test because people considered you incompetent." "The people believed that I was insane." "I think so. I may be," said Morrison, coming into a conversation. "It is not crazy that wins battles like that before the ships become visible. Crazy does not observe enemies. Crazy does not devise a for-ship attack against a non-existent target in 10 seconds. Flying back to the carrier, Zara recalled her thinking of her father. Marcus Blackwood was once a hero, a pilot who had brought a number of lives out of danger with his instincts. Saint Eugrenia. Why? Now she knew why. Nor had he been only blessed, but cursed too, with the same sense of time that had been such a curse to her. Probably he had learned to conceal it, not like her. He was well trained to cover his impossible moves by making them seem to be happenstance, his precognitive escapes by making them seem to be technique. He had never mentioned to anyone the heavy load he was carrying, the weight of witnessing things that could never see the light of the day. When Zara returned to the carrier, she was again in the office of Commander Hayes. The only difference this time, though, was that she was not the only one. There sat Captain Vasquez and Lieutenant Morrison and Lieutenant Chen, besides a number of other officers whom she did not know. Hayes looked up through a pile of reports, saying, "Blackwood, I have been watching the battle pictures. I never saw such performance like yours. Precognitive maneuvering, impossible targeting solutions, tactical awareness that bats on the supernatural. This I might be able to explain, sir." "I can explain," Esther's cold. "What the devil dost thou mean?" "Halt. What does one mean, sir?" "Can tell." "Hold. What the devil dost thou know?" "Can tell, sir." "I say dost know." "Can tell, sir." "I say dost know." "Can tell, sir." Asterisk, no explanations needed. "I have already consulted with our scientists upon the time suspension field in the sector. They affirm that it may statistically increase some form of precognitive competence, at least in people who have particular genetic tags, signs which we have now found in your DNA." Hayes rose and came to stand behind his desk, looking straight at her. "You are not a busted pilot, Blackwood. You are something quite new. A time finder. A man who has ability to see the strands of temporal and spatial in a manner which others are not able to see." "What does that imply on me?" Zara asked. "It implies that you are being transferred to a new unit, a special department that responds to the things that exist beyond normal spacetime. Danger that needs a corner rounder, time traveler, a person that can look creatures into chances that they have not even arrived yet." Zara felt relief and fear at the same time. "What kind of threats?" "The kind that are coming whether we're ready for them or not. The kind that your father spent his career fighting, even though he never told anyone what he was really up against." Hayes handed her a new set of orders, the paper crisp and official. "Welcome to Temporal Squadron, Lieutenant Blackwood. Your first mission begins tomorrow." As Zara left the commander's office, she found Captain Vasquez waiting for her in the corridor. The older woman's expression was serious, but there was something else there to respect, maybe even admiration. "Zara," Vasquez said, "I want you to know that what you did out there saved a lot of lives, not just our squad, but everyone on those platforms. The colony below us has 3 million people. I just did what I could see needed to be done," Zara replied. "That's exactly what makes you dangerous, and exactly what makes you valuable." Vasquez paused. "Your father would be proud." That evening, Zara sat in her quarters, staring at the stars through her small porthole. She thought about all the failed tests, all the instructors who told her she was hopeless, all the times she doubted herself. She thought about the battle, about the impossible maneuvers she'd performed, about the futures she'd seen and the past she'd changed. For the first time in her life, she understood what she was. Not a failed pilot, but something entirely different. Something that the universe needed. even if it didn't understand why. She thought about her father, about the secrets he'd carried, about the burden he'd passed down to her. She thought about the temporal distortion field, about the enemies that existed outside normal spacetime, about the battles that would be fought not just in space, but across the threads of time itself. Tomorrow, she would begin her real training. She would learn to control her abilities, to see through time without losing herself in the maze of possibilities. She would learn to fight battles that hadn't happened yet, to prevent futures that must never come to pass. She would become what her father had been, a guardian of time itself, a pilot who could fly not just through space, but through the very fabric of reality. As she prepared for sleep, Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope, not just for herself, but for everyone who would depend on her abilities in the battles to come. She closed her eyes and let her consciousness drift, feeling the gentle pull of temporal currents that most people couldn't even sense. In her dreams, she saw the future, not the chaotic, fragmented vision she'd experienced during the battle, but something clearer, a path forward, a purpose. She saw herself leading a squadron of temporal navigators, pilots who could see through time just as she could. She saw battles fought across multiple dimensions, enemies defeated before they could attack, timelines protected from those who would exploit them. She saw herself becoming not just a pilot, but a guardian of reality itself. And for the first time in her life, Zara Blackwood understood that every failure had been preparation for this moment. Every crash simulation, every failed test, every instructor who told her she was hopeless, all of it had been leading to this. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, exactly when she was supposed to be there, even if she had arrived by flying backwards through time.